haunted room 309 of the Horton Grand Hotel for an hour, nothing. Until Alon starts asking questions out loud, and then this meter starts to light up. And for every question she asks, it seemed to respond with the lights. So I ask out loud, can you stop using this meter and use this one over here? At which point it actually did.
Hey everybody, this is Danilo. Welcome again. And hey, I am going to tell you today about a recounting of an investigation that I did with some friends of the Horton Grand Hotel, which is in the Gaslamp district of San Diego. And we did this investigation about 9 years ago now, so I believe the date was September 14th in 2007. And again, this is all a recounting. So you may be asking yourself, why did you take so long to report this? Well, actually, at the time that we had completed the investigation, I had gone on the internet because we got some pretty cool stuff and I wanted to see what other people got. And during that week that I was looking, I noticed that some of the places that I had looked at earlier in the week had no longer been there. So I was wondering what was going on, and it turns out that the owners, and perhaps it was either the owners or the managers of the hotel, didn't want people talking about the ghost activity there. So I didn't want any trouble, so I shelved the data, not knowing what to do with it, and then totally forgot about it for 9 years. And then a couple weeks ago, I was on YouTube, and I just out of curiosity Googled, YouTubed the Horton Grand Hotel, and I saw that there not only are there reports there, but they've been there for almost 5 years now. So that spurred me to do this and tell you about the wonderful things that we found. So I'm going to tell you about the investigation now. So again, it was September 14th in 2007. And we were investigating room 309, which has purported to be haunted. The hotel itself is purported to be haunted, but this room in particular. And my research indicated that it was probably the ghost of Roger Whittaker in about 1840s. Now, there's two stories and that you will hear when you Google or ask the staff, because we asked the staff at the time. The story they told us, the two stories they told us was Roger Whittaker got a woman pregnant, and the father of the woman didn't like that and ended up shooting and killing Roger Whittaker. That was one of the stories. And I guess that was in the room. The other story is that Roger Whittaker was actually a gambler, and then he cheated some guys and then tried to hide in the wardrobe in his room and then was shot and killed in the wardrobe. So there are two stories, and I didn't want to really historically research. I wasn't that interested in that particular aspect. I just want to know what was going on in the room. Now, notoriously, at the time on the internet, a lot of people said there's lots of activity in the hotel in general and in that room in particular. So we were super excited to go and do this investigation. So there were 5 of us that went to the investigation. So there was my friend Adam, which I'm probably showing you a picture of now. My other friend Joe. So Adam was visiting from Texas. Joe was a resident of San Diego at the time. My wife, Alon, myself, and an individual that we will call Axel, because at the time of this recording, he did not give our permission to show his face or mention his name for whatever personal reasons. We're going to respect that. So 5 of us in the investigation.
So before we did anything, I went in there and did a full sweep, meaning that I went in with my EMF meter and took all the readings. There was nothing unusual, nothing spiking. There was only spikes around the outlets if you got very close, within like a couple inches of the outlets, and that was it. There wasn't anything else in that room to make the EMF meters go off. So here's the one thing that I regret about the night, which is we brought a video camera. I brought a video camera. However, I amateurishly forgot to bring the adapter to charge it up. So we had 2 batteries with us, which only lasted up to 2 hours, and that was it. And we had to wait 2 hours before anything happened. So I'm offering you anecdotal evidence, and all the members, all the people that were there with me, all corroborate that this actually happened. However, because I screwed up and didn't bring the adapter, I only have this anecdotal evidence, which I'm going to share with you now. There we were in the notoriously haunted room 309 of the Horton Grand Hotel for an hour, nothing. Until Alon starts asking questions out loud, and then this meter starts to light up. And for every question she asks, it seemed to respond with the lights. So I ask out loud, hey, we do not know if this is real or not. Can you stop using this meter and use this one over here? At which point it actually did. Now, we were amazed that it had switched from one EMF meter to the other, but I still wasn't totally convinced. So then I asked again audibly, after a couple of questions that Alon had asked this entity or whatever was in the room making that happen, I asked it to switch to the other meter, and it did again, switched from one meter to the other. So I was still not convinced. So as Alon is talking to this entity through the EMF meters, and as she's asking questions, you seem to get an answer by its flitting, as if it was trying to use it as a microphone. We couldn't hear a voice, and it didn't do like once for yes, two for no. It was just like flitting, like blah, 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 like there was someone was talking. So I was like, okay, so I grabbed them off the mantle, and I put them on the bed next to each other. Not totally next to each other, but just like a few inches away. And I asked it, okay, please use this meter over here. And it did. And then we had a few more questions, and I was like, okay, just so we can be sure, can you now use this other meter instead of this one? And a few moments pass, and it starts using that one. It seems to be a sentient being, and it's able to interact with us through this EMF meter. Now, during the course of time, just like in a lull of conversation, Alon kind of ran out of things to ask it, and it seemed to get tired of us asking it questions anyway, so there was like a natural lull. At which point, I picked up the meters and thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to do a sweep of the room again. Since I have a baseline from before, I can do a comparison of what the room was like then compared to what it is now. So within the room, I have the EMF meter. Axel has the other one, and we're walking around the room, and I'm trying to get readings. Now, as we're doing it, Joe and Adam and Alon are taking photographs to see what's around, and they're catching orbs. Now, if you talk about orbs, people always say, well, that's dust, or it could be an entity. So what I wanted to do is, since we had two EMF meters, I wanted to get the EMF meters both going off and see if we could catch a moment where there was also an orb. That way, it wasn't so much like, oh, look, there's an orb. Oh, there's an EMF. In this way, you're using 2 or 3 methods, in this case 3 because we have 2 EMF meters, and photographs from 2 different people and 2 different angles, showing if we could find an orb with the EMF meters going at the same time. And we did. We got this image. Now that's me on the left, that's Axel on the right. You can see we have the meters in our hands, and they're both going off about the same. They're going somewhere between yellow and orange. And you can also see a gigantic orb above our heads, which I thought, okay, in review, I was like, that is significant. Because after they got the shot, I was asking, can you guys get a shot of the orb and the meters going off at the same time? And they're like, yeah, we'll try. And we get this image, which shows me it's not just dust. It's not just an anomaly on the EMF meter. That is 3 different devices capturing the one event, which to me was like, okay, that increases the probability that this is not just a mistake or not just an error that we're catching, but we're actually catching something in the room that's interacting with us on the meters and in photography. Now, this is all occurring within a couple hours. And then after, just like with anything, the activity kind of slowed down. And some of the members started falling asleep. Adam was falling asleep. Axel was falling asleep. Joe and I stayed up. Alon fell asleep as well. So I'm sitting on the bed, and I'm holding the meter in my hand to see if I can get any random readings that could explain this. Now, Joe had told me that he thought that there could be a satellite thing above the room we were in. However, we weren't on the top floor. We were on the 3rd, so I think there's another 4th floor. And I had taken base readings before we had gone in there and got those very strange readings that we got. So I don't believe that that's the case at all. Joe being highly skeptic, I can understand that he would say that. So I'm sitting on the bed, and I'm waiting to see if I can get any readings at all. And I have it in my hand, so I'm purposely looking off to my right, and I can see out of the corner of my eye whether the meter's going off, and it's not. And every time I go to look at the meter, it starts to flash green. And fortunately, Joe was sitting in the chair across from the bed, and I would say out loud, all right, I see you. I see that you're there. And then it would stop. And then I would look away for a number of seconds. I tried to do it on random intervals, still looking out of the corner of my eye. to see if it lit up, and it wouldn't light up. And it wasn't until I looked back over and looked at the meter again that it would light up yet again. Just a couple flits. And then go down. And I'm like, okay, I see you. And then I look away again. I repeated that at least 3 to 4 times. And every time I did it, looked away, looking at it from the corner of my eye, and looked back, the light would turn on again for at least a couple, at least like 3 or 4 times. It would go just to let me know. So all of those things together, that told us, hey, there is something in this room. Those stories that everyone said the room is haunted, or there's a person in there. There's fully a person in there, and they're ready to interact with you. So that right there convinced us, between the 2 EMFs and the fact that it could switch on command, not just once, but like 4 or 5 times. And then the photographs with the orb, with both the EMF meters going off, and also me on the bed and doing this visual test where I looked away, watching it in the corner of my eye and looking back over, and it would turn on as if to say, yeah, man, I'm right here. Those 3 things together convinced all of us that was like, there's something weird going on. Even Joe, who's skeptical, he was like, he couldn't say, well, that's a ghost, but he was like, well, that was weird. And he couldn't explain it other than he thought there could be some sort of satellite thing above the floor above us, which Alana and I had stayed after everyone had left because we were the last ones out of the room. We'd stayed and I took base readings and I waited to see if I could catch anything. I even tried to turn things on. I can't remember if there was a radio in the room. I don't think there was. And I don't think there was a TV either. So there was nothing in there, or there was nothing in any of the other rooms that would do that. We turned on hair dryers. We couldn't read that from the other room. And hair dryers, if you have an EMF meter, if you hold it up to a hair dryer, it has a huge field around it, like 3 or 4 feet. And there was nothing that noisy. So those 3 things, plus the fact that we had taken baseline readings, that really convinced us that there's something unusual about the Horton Grand room 309. That's our story. Again, this is Danilo. Thanks for coming to Ghost Theory. I hope you enjoyed the story. And so I'm editing right now, and I remembered a story that Adam told me when I asked permission to use his name, and that was when we first went in the room to do baseline readings, that he checked the thermostat of the room and looked around. And then during the course of the investigation, I forgot that he had asked the entity or the ghost or whatever that was occupying the room if they could make the temperature in the room drop. And that was when the meter was flashing, and the meter actually stopped flashing for a second, and it went away for a moment, and then Alon asked another question and came back. But the temperature of the room didn't feel that much different. And then later throughout the night, we were all like, hey, are you guys cold? He's like, yeah, it's cold. Adam got up to check the thermostat and found that it was at a different lower temp than it was earlier, because he had checked it, and made record of it in his mind. So the funny thing is, he had asked the ghost to drop the temperature of the room. The ghost actually used the thermostat, which is funny in 2 ways because, well, firstly, they used the thermostat. They're probably like, yeah, sure, that's not a problem, and they turned it down. The other thing is, if this ghost is one of the notorious ghosts, they were from a time when there was no thermostat. So this entity had learned that you can control the temperature of the room through the thermostat, which I thought was also interesting. That's an end story there that I have for you guys. Thanks again for watching, and have a good night.